Hey guys, it's Elena, and welcome back to What Was Meant. Today we're breaking down 10 common therapy terms you've probably heard, but maybe never really connected with, especially if you grew up in a dysfunctional or abusive family. A lot of therapy language can sound like psychobabble, but I want to change that because when you've lived through trauma, these words aren't abstract. They're the language of survival, the way your mind and body protected you when no one else did. My goal today is to make these terms real, relatable, and empowering because understanding them isn't just about psychology, it's about healing. And if you recognize yourself in any of what I share, please know this. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means your nervous system did exactly what it needed to do to keep you safe. There is no shame in survival. All right, let's get into it. Number one, inner child and reparenting. I've put these first two terms under one umbrella because they're so closely connected. Your inner child is the part of you that still carries the pain, fear, and unmet needs from your early years. Reparenting means becoming the healthy, safe, and loving adult that your younger self needed but didn't have. Let me explain. When you grow up being shamed for your emotions or denied the protection and validation every child deserves, you learn that showing feelings isn't safe and having needs feels like too much, so you bury them. It's a survival strategy that shields you from pain in the moment, but it comes with long-term effects. As an adult, this can show up in subtle ways. You might find it hard to relax or feel joy without guilt, or you downplay your pain because you tell yourself other people had it worse. Maybe it's easy to feel compassion for everyone else, but nearly impossible to extend that same kindness to yourself. You might even feel uneasy when emotions come up, yours or anyone else's, and sometimes you just feel disconnected from who you used to be. These are all signs of a child who had to grow up too fast and is still waiting to feel seen. In my case, I can never relate when people say they wish they could go back to their childhood because mine was filled with trauma. When I heard therapists talk about the inner child, I tuned out because childhood was the last place I wanted to revisit. Whenever I saw stories about abused children, I felt deep anger and empathy for them. But when I looked at photos of myself as a child, I felt nothing. I thought something was wrong with me because I didn't understand why that disconnect was there. That all changed in 2020, the year the world shut down and forced so many of us into self reflection. A few days before my 50th birthday, I looked at a photo of myself at 6 years old and for the first time felt recognition, love, and empathy for the little girl looking back at me. That was my light bulb moment. I realized that I had never given her the outrage, protection, or validation she deserved, the things the adults in my life failed to give her. For the first time, I saw my younger self through the eyes of someone who could finally care for her. And here's what I posted on social media. Being able to care for your inner child begins when you can feel the same empathy for your younger self that you'd feel for any other child who suffered abuse or neglect. Maybe for you, it's remembering a moment when you felt completely alone, or realizing you've never mourned what you went through, you've just minimized it. Or maybe it's noticing how quickly you dismiss your own pain while rushing to comfort everyone else. That's often how disconnection from your inner child shows up in adulthood. You meet everyone else's pain with compassion, but you meet your own with silence. Recognizing that isn't weakness, it's the doorway to healing. Healing and reparenting your inner child means giving yourself the compassion, care, and boundaries that were missing in your childhood. It's not about rewriting the past, it's about healing the child you once were by becoming the adult you needed and can finally trust. After that moment of connection with the photo, I started doing small things to rebuild that bond with my younger self. I thought about what I loved as a child, what made me happy back then. As a little girl, my favorite color was red, so I bought a bright red office chair as a daily reminder of that connection. Little steps like that go a long way in reconnecting with your younger self, one small, loving act at a time. Number two, trauma bonding. Trauma bonding happens when you form an emotional attachment to someone who hurt you, sort of like Stockholm syndrome. It's not love, it's survival. Your brain confuses danger and relief because both release powerful chemicals that feel like connection. As a child, if your caregiver alternated between cruelty and kindness, your body learned to latch on to any calm moment as proof that love still existed. Narcissists are really good at creating trauma bonds with the people that they abuse. And when that narcissist is your parent, they literally have a captive audience since you depend on them for survival during your formative years. In adulthood, this can look like staying loyal to people who hurt you, feeling responsible for their feelings, trying to fix people who don't want to change, feeling guilty for setting boundaries, or mistaking chaos for love. In my case, I grew up watching my parents fight violently. I felt responsible for protecting my mother and siblings, even when she also harmed me and refused to reciprocate that protection. That protector role I took on turned into a bond built on pain, and it took years to hold my mother accountable for the damage she caused. I also developed a trauma bond with my father, latching onto little things like the one time in kindergarten when he gave me a Three Musketeers candy bar as proof that he loved me on some level, even as he committed horrific abuse. For many survivors, a trauma bond with a parent looks like being hurt and then comforted by the same person, the one who caused the pain. Maybe they yelled, shamed, or even hit you, then justified their behavior by saying something like, "You know, I only do this because I love you," or "This hurts me more than it hurts you." Those mixed signals teach a child to confuse abuse with love and survival with loyalty. You learn to cling to the few calm moments because they feel like safety, even when they're just a break in the storm. Healing begins with recognition, seeing the bond for what it is, a survival mechanism that no longer serves you, not love. Once you see that, you can name the pattern: pain, relief, hope, then pain again. A vicious recycled system that only ends when you decide to take your ball and go home. Once you do that, you start building relationships based on real love, safety, and consistency, and your nervous system will begin to learn that calm isn't boring, it's peace. Number 3, dissociation. Dissociation is the mind's emergency escape hatch, a built in survival response that lets you disconnect from unbearable pain, fear, or reality. It's your brain saying, "This is too much to handle right now, so I'm stepping outside myself." As a child, when you're repeatedly exposed to trauma without protection or comfort, your nervous system learns that mentally checking out is safer than staying present. You might daydream, go numb, or feel like you're watching life happen from outside your body. It isn't a flaw, it's an adaptation to danger. Your brain begins to compartmentalize and disconnect to keep you safe. In adulthood, that same mechanism can still show up. You might feel numb, spaced out, or detached from your emotions, like you're watching life from a distance. Sometimes it looks like moving through your days on autopilot, getting things done, but feeling empty inside. You may even struggle to retain details, names, faces, or conversations because you were never fully there to begin with. In my case, dissociation protected me through years of severe abuse. I was so detached that as an adult, when I tried therapy, clinicians would comment on how well I'd healed on my own, when in reality, I was just deeply disconnected and an expert at compartmentalizing. It wasn't until I truly felt safe, after years of hard work and healing, that I began to reconnect with my younger self and integrate what I had separated for survival. For you, it might look like being in a stressful conversation and suddenly feeling like you're watching it happen from outside your body. You hear the words, you nod and respond, but it's like you're not really there. Or you realize you've gone through an entire day on autopilot, doing what needs to be done, but feeling completely blank. That's dissociation. It's not that you don't care, it's that your mind learned long ago to step out when things felt overwhelming, and it's still trying to protect you the same way it did back then. The empowering part is that once you can name what's happening, you can start healing. Awareness helps to retrain your nervous system to recognize that the danger is gone, that the survival response that once saved you isn't needed anymore. Healing means slowly teaching your mind and body that it's safe to stay present again. Even after you begin to reconnect with yourself, your body might still be stuck in defense mode, scanning for threats, staying ready, even when life is calm. That's the next part of this healing journey, understanding what it means to live in hypervigilance, when your nervous system doesn't realize the war is over. That brings me to number 4, hypervigilance and survival mode. Hypervigilance is what happens when your body keeps running on survival energy long after the danger is past. It's living with your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, exhausted but unable to rest. When a child grows up in an environment of constant tension or abuse, their body learns that safety depends on reading every tone, look, or shift in mood. Staying alert becomes second nature. The problem is that hyperawareness doesn't turn off just because you've left the unsafe environment. Your nervous system keeps doing its job even when it's no longer needed. As an adult, that can look like always being on edge, overanalyzing people's expressions, or replaying conversations trying to figure out what went wrong. You might find it hard to relax, startle easily, or feel uneasy when things are too quiet, because calm feels foreign, even unsafe. For me, that constant hypervigilance was my normal. I grew up knowing that a single look, mood, or wrong word could mean danger. And even years later, after going no contact, my body still didn't get the message that it was safe. Eventually, I developed Cushing's disease, a rare condition caused by a pituitary brain tumor that made my body overproduce cortisol, the fight or flight hormone. My body thought it was protecting me, but it was actually breaking me down, and it almost killed me after I went almost 18 years undiagnosed. In your case, it could look like this. You finally get a moment of peace, but instead of relaxing, you feel anxious, waiting for the next thing to go wrong. That's survival mode. Your nervous system is still on high alert, preparing for a threat that's no longer there. The good news is this can change. Healing hypervigilance is about helping your body unlearn the habit of danger. It starts with small things: deep breathing, grounding yourself in the present, and reminding your body that it's safe now. Over time, your nervous system learns that it no longer has to fight for its life every single day. And that's when peace, the kind that once felt unfamiliar, finally starts to feel normal. Number 5, gaslighting. Gaslighting is one of the most confusing and painful forms of emotional abuse because it makes you doubt your own memory, perception, and even your sanity. It's when someone deliberately twists facts, denies things you know are true, or rewrites reality until you start questioning yourself instead of them. For a child, this kind of manipulation can be devastating. When your caregivers tell you that what you saw didn't happen or that your feelings are wrong or exaggerated, you begin to lose trust in your own perception of reality.
I even met someone.
Yes, the wanted thief. I'm so proud.
Oh, Rapunzel, you know I hate leaving you after a fight, especially when I've done absolutely nothing wrong.
I just listened for the sound of complete and utter betrayal and followed that.
Oh, great. Now I'm the bad guy.
You start to believe that the only way to feel safe is to accept their version of the truth. And that confusion can follow you well into adulthood. As an adult, the effects of gaslighting can look like constantly apologizing, over explaining yourself, or second guessing what really happened. You might feel confused after conversations with manipulative people, or even question whether you're too sensitive or too dramatic when something clearly hurts you. It's not that you're fragile, it's that you were trained to mistrust yourself. In my family of origin, gaslighting was constant. In my video, 13 Ways Narcissistic Fathers Try to Crush Their Daughters, I talk about a time when my father confronted me about something nefarious that he'd done and asked why I told one of my uncles about it. But within minutes, he flipped the story completely, claiming it never happened at all, and then enlisted my mother and brother to back him up. It was like reality had been rewritten in real time. That moment taught me how powerful gaslighting can be when used as a weapon against you. Maybe you've had a similar experience. Someone hurt you, and when you brought it up, they said, "You're imagining things," or "You're too emotional." Over time, that kind of treatment erodes your self trust. You stop believing what you feel, what you see, and what you know. The truth is, gaslighting isn't about misunderstanding, it's about control. And the first step to breaking free is remembering that your feelings are valid, your memories are real, and your perception is trustworthy. Healing from gaslighting starts with believing yourself again. Sometimes that means journaling events as they happen so you have a record of what's real. Other times it's about surrounding yourself with people who affirm your reality instead of twisting it. Bit by bit, you reclaim the self-trust that was stolen from you. Because once you can stand firmly in your truth, no amount of denial or manipulation can shake it again. Number 6, parentification. Parentification happens when a child is forced into the role of caregiver, emotionally, physically, or both. Instead of being nurtured, the child becomes the one who nurtures. It's love turned upside down, where responsibility replaces innocence. When parents are emotionally immature, unavailable, or abusive, the child steps into the space the adults abandon. They soothe the parents' moods, protect siblings, or take care of daily needs that should never fall on a child's shoulders. And even though it looks like maturity from the outside, it's really survival, a child doing what's necessary to keep the family functioning. As adults, those same survivors often find themselves carrying that over-responsibility into every relationship. They struggle to rest without guilt, feel anxious when they're not helping someone, and attract people, emotional vampires, who rely on them but rarely show up in return. Deep down, they've learned that love means caretaking and that their own needs come last. In my case, parentification started early. 3 days before I turned 7, my little sister was born, and almost immediately, my mother handed over much of her care to me. My sister even called me Ma Lena, part mom, part my name. I was her translator, her comforter, and her protector. When others in the family were hurt or scared, they came to me, not our parents. I wasn't just a child in that house, I was the adult in the room in a child's body. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you were the one who comforted your mother after her fights, made sure your siblings were fed, or learned to sense everyone's moods just to keep the peace. People may have called you so responsible or mature for your age, but what they didn't see was the cost, the exhaustion of growing up without ever feeling safe enough to just be a kid. Healing from parentification begins with permission. Permission to have needs, to rest, and to exist without earning your worth through service. It means learning that your value isn't measured by how much you do for others, but by who you are. It can feel strange at first, even selfish, to put yourself first, but it's not selfish. It's self-restoration because you were never supposed to be the parent in that story. You were supposed to be the child. And healing means finally taking the time to prioritize yourself. Number 7, people pleasing. People pleasing isn't about being kind, it's about staying safe. It's a trauma response that forms when love, approval, or peace were only given conditionally. When a child learns that affection can vanish the moment they disappoint someone, they start to believe that keeping everyone happy is the only way to survive. As children, people pleasers learned that saying no led to rejection, conflict, or punishment. So they learned to anticipate everyone's needs, to overfunction, and to smooth things over, even when it cost them their own peace. On the outside, they look generous and dependable, but on the inside, they're terrified of disapproval. In adulthood, this can show up in subtle ways. Saying yes when you're exhausted, apologizing even when you've done nothing wrong, or avoiding conflict at all costs. You might over-explain yourself just to prevent someone from being upset, or feel anxious when someone's quiet or takes longer than usual to respond because you assume you did something wrong. People pleasers don't seek praise, they seek safety. For me, that pattern was deeply ingrained. Growing up, I did everything I could to earn my parents' approval. For my father, that meant working long hours in his photography business without pay, organizing shoots, handling clients, doing marketing, all while he told others he was paying me very well. With my mother, it meant making her look good by setting a spiritual example and devoting endless time to being a faithful Jehovah's Witness so she could look good in the eyes of others in the congregation. No matter what I did, it was never enough. I learned that love was conditional and that my worth depended on performance. In your case, you might find yourself overextending for people who rarely reciprocate or apologizing just to keep the peace. You might even feel guilty for saying no, as though protecting your energy means you're a bad person. But it's not kindness that drives this behavior, it's survival. Healing from people pleasing means unlearning the belief that your worth depends on how much you do for others. It starts with the smallest acts of truth telling, saying, I can't right now, or that doesn't work for me, and letting the silence hang without rushing to fill it. It means accepting that someone else's disappointment doesn't make you wrong or less than. Over time, you realize that your peace isn't something you have to earn, it's something you deserve. And saying no to what drains you is actually saying yes to the version of you that's learning how to feel safe just being yourself. Because love that requires you to disappear or perform out of obligation isn't love, it's control. And you don't have to live that way anymore. Number 8, core wounds and core beliefs. Core wounds are the deep hidden beliefs we form about ourselves as children. The messages we absorb, not because they're true, but because they were repeated or implied through how we were treated. When a child grows up in chaos, neglect, or abuse, they can't see their caregivers as the problem, so they turn the blame inward instead. They think, it must be me, I must not be good enough. These beliefs, things like I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, my needs don't matter, become the lens through which we see everything. They shape how we love, how we trust, and even how much happiness we allow ourselves to have. They're like invisible scripts that run quietly in the background, influencing every choice we make without us even realizing it. As adults, core wounds can show up as perfectionism, overachievement, or feeling undeserving of love, rest, or success. You might sabotage good things because they feel uncomfortable, or dismiss compliments because they don't fit the story you were taught to believe about yourself. It's not low self-esteem, it's programming. For me, those wounds ran deep. As a child, I learned that my needs didn't matter, that my value came from what I could do, and that love had to be earned. I became hypervigilant about being perfect, my appearance, my work, my behavior, anything to avoid criticism or rejection. I thought if I can just do everything right, maybe I'd finally be seen as worthy. But perfection never brought peace. It only reinforced the belief that I had to keep earning what should have been freely given. Maybe you can relate. You may have learned to measure your worth by productivity or how much money you make, or to brace yourself for rejection anytime things start to go well. Or maybe you've carried the quiet belief that you'll never be enough, even though you spent your whole life trying to prove otherwise. Those beliefs aren't truth, they're trauma echoes. Healing begins the moment you start questioning them. It's catching yourself in those old thought patterns and gently asking, whose voice is this, and do I still want to carry it? It's replacing judgment with curiosity and giving yourself the compassion you never received. Over time, you start building new evidence, small daily reminders that you are enough, that your needs matter, and that love doesn't have to be earned. Because healing your core wounds isn't about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to doubt yourself. Number 9, projection. Projection happens when someone can't face their own flaws, feelings, or mistakes, so they assign them to you instead. It's like they take the parts of themselves they don't want to see and throw them onto you like a shadow. The cruel irony is that you end up defending yourself against things that were never yours to begin with. For children growing up with narcissistic or emotionally immature parents, projection can be constant. A parent who lies might call you dishonest. A parent who's cruel might say you're too sensitive. When that happens over and over, you start believing those false labels because kids are wired to trust their caregivers more than themselves. In adulthood, projection can show up in all kinds of relationships. You might be accused of things that don't make sense or blamed for emotions that belong to someone else. You might even find yourself wondering, am I the problem? When you're not. You've just been trained to take responsibility for everyone's discomfort. In my case, projection was practically the language of my childhood. My father constantly accused me of being dishonest, even though he was the one lying to everyone around him. Years later, just a couple of months ago actually, he even tried to smear me online under a fake name, claiming I was a liar and mentally unstable. Every accusation was really a confession. He was describing himself. Maybe you've lived that too, being told you're too emotional by someone who can't handle their own emotions, or being called controlling by someone who's actually controlling you. That's the thing about projection. It flips reality on its head and makes you doubt your own integrity. The truth is, projection says everything about the person doing it and nothing about you. The moment you realize that, you stop defending yourself against their lies and start protecting your peace instead. Healing from projection means learning to pause and ask, does this belong to me? If the answer is no, let it fall away. You don't have to carry anyone else's shadow or subscribe to their issues. What others project onto you is their unfinished business, not your identity. When you stop internalizing projections, you free up space to reconnect with who you really are. And that's a huge step toward reclaiming your power. Number 10, boundaries. Boundaries are the invisible lines that protect your peace, your energy, and your sense of self. They define where you end and someone else begins, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically. Healthy people respect them. Toxic people test them. When you grow up in a family where privacy doesn't exist or where saying no is punished, you learn early that boundaries aren't safe. You might be taught that setting limits is selfish, that your feelings don't matter, or that compliance equals love. Over time, you stop expecting respect and start accepting intrusion as normal. In adulthood, that can look like over-explaining yourself to avoid guilt, letting others overstep because you're scared of conflict, or feeling bad for saying no, even when you're at your breaking point. You might even think that protecting your peace means you're cold or unkind, when really it means you're learning self-respect. In my own life, boundaries were virtually non-existent growing up. My parents acted like my privacy belonged to them, and anything personal I shared was used against me. Even after I went no contact, my mother still tried to cross those lines through letters, the ones I shared in my Letters from a Covert Narcissist Mother series. For narcissistic parents, no isn't a boundary, it's a challenge. Maybe you've experienced something similar. You try to set a limit, a little distance, a pause in communication, and your abuser suddenly ramps up the guilt, the religious pressure, or the "I just want to make peace" messages. But deep down, you know it's not about connection, it's about control. Here's the truth. Your boundary is not up for negotiation. It doesn't make you cruel, it makes you healthy. And the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always see your growth as betrayal. Healing through boundaries starts with giving yourself permission to protect your energy, even if others don't understand it. It's realizing that you don't owe anyone access to you simply because they demand it. You can say no without explanation. You can step back without guilt. At first, enforcing boundaries can feel unnatural, even lonely, because you're used to being the one who gives endlessly. But over time, you begin to feel something new: peace. And peace is what healthy love is supposed to feel like. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with locks. And you get to decide who comes through, because you're not the same person who once tolerated disrespect just to keep the peace. You've done the work, and now you know. Protecting your peace is the ultimate act of self-love. So that wraps up my breakdown of 10 common therapy terms. If you saw yourself in any of these patterns, I hope you remember this. It doesn't mean you're broken, it means you survived. Every one of these trauma responses, dissociation, people-pleasing, hypervigilance, even the inability to rest, began as a form of protection. Your mind and body found ways to keep you safe in a world that wasn't. But now you're in a different chapter, and this chapter isn't about surviving, it's about healing and thriving. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small, quiet moments, noticing a trigger without judgment, saying no when you used to say yes, or showing compassion to the parts of yourself that you once ignored. It's in those moments that you start to reclaim what trauma took from you: your voice, your peace, your self-trust. You've made it through things that were meant to break you, and you're still here, learning, growing, and healing. That's not weakness, that's power. Every time you choose awareness over avoidance or peace over chaos, you're rewriting the story that trauma tried to tell about you. If you're watching this and realizing just how much you've carried, please hear me when I say this. You are not alone, and you are not too damaged to heal. You were never meant to spend your life fighting invisible battles from your past. You were meant to live freely, to breathe deeply, and to experience peace without apology. So give yourself permission to take up space, to rest, to feel, and to grow. You deserve to exist as more than just your survival story. You deserve to live as the healed, whole person you've always been becoming. If this video helped you put some of those pieces together for you, gave you a new perspective, or reminded you how strong you really are, please like, share, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what resonated most. You never know whose light might turn on because you shared yours, and together we're breaking cycles and building something better. Thank you for being here with me today and for walking this part of the journey alongside me. Remember, healing isn't about who hurt you, it's about who you choose to become. Until next time, I'm Elena, and this is What Was Meant. Take good care and have a great day.